The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hi, welcome to The Ring and All Other Sports. My name is Leo Connors and I'm your host. Today I have two very special guests as we're going to be doing a special episode on the hashtag speaking out movement that shocked the wrestling world and New England wrestling world on June 17th. I think it started, and then the local stuff started around June 19th. Today as my guest, I have professional wrestler Delilah Hayden making her return.
Hello.
And Maverick Wild making his 100th return. He's been on quite a bit. But like I always say, he has an open invitation to come on anytime he wants. Guys, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Mav, I mean, you brought this up to my attention that we should do something like this. You know?
And I would like to point out that it was actually my wife's pointing out that, hey, dummy, don't you think you should have a woman on this rather than just...
She's a lot smarter than both of us.
Don't say that.
But she did particularly say, no, she picked you.
That was both our choice, really. Yeah. And I just struck me as rather intelligent.
Yes.
Thank you.
Not super... obnoxious like me, but...
you're not obnoxious.
Yes, I am. But I'm going to try not to be this time. Not afraid to be a little outspoken as well.
No, not at all.
No, I thought it was great. When you brought it to my attention, I was like, that's perfect. That's why I hit you up as soon as you told me. So, All right, guys. I'd like to just start off saying that how wrong a lot of these things were. A lot of these things are allegedly, things like that. I mean, I don't want to get any of us in trouble. Mm-hmm. This is everything that we're going to bring up is allegedly, I think, right? There's nothing that's been proven.
Do you want to explain to people what the speaking out movement is that may not know what it is?
Sure. So the speaking out movement started with professional wrestler David Starr getting outed by a former girlfriend for a list of just abuse, and it just sort of snowballed from there. The entire European wrestling scene was put on display. And then it trickled, of course. It gave other people a chance to go, hey, I've been through this too. Maybe I should actually put out my accuser out there. But it wasn't just I know a lot of people oh, it's just sexual assault, sexual abuse. That's not the case. There's emotional manipulation. There's drug and alcohol addiction, enabling bullying, a variety of things, like physical assault that just goes on in the wrestling world. And it's either been accepted as part of a hazing process, or if you just have friends in higher places, it kind of just gets swept under the rug, and that's not right.
That's right. It's definitely not right.
And the killer, and I know we're going to get into the local stuff later, but the killer is that the people in higher places are really basically locally. It's more like people that can just get you on shows or help you get on shows. And I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but a lot of it just seems to happen because it makes people feel a little more powerful. Right. It's always easier to stuff somebody down than to bring somebody up.
Right.
And not to mention some of it goes way beyond that too. But I mean, that seems to be where a lot of it starts. Really does.
Yeah. We're just gonna get right into it. The first name I'm going to bring up is Matt Riddle, and he was accused. And we'll say it's been out there, so I have no problem saying, if it's been out there, we will say certain things. When we get to local, we'll probably be a little vague.
Yeah.
Matt Riddle, he was accused by Katie Cartwright, allegedly grabbed her by the throat after asking her to have sex while he was driving. She said no. He grabbed her by the throat and said something to the effect of, how about if I make you? And I feel so bad for this girl because for that point on, she decided that she would have rather gave him oral sex, you know what I mean? To keep everybody sleeping and not have him physically hurt her.
Right.
That's just horrible.
That's just outright rape. I mean,
yeah,
it really is.
Rape doesn't have to be final penetration. Right. There can be, there's varying degrees of that.
Absolutely. And to see him still working for the number one wrestling company in the world, and it seems like they don't really care.
No, they cut Jack Gallagher right away. When his allegations came out I know we're gonna bring him up later, but Velveteen Dream had stuff come up, and he's still there, and that one sucks for me. Like, I'm a fan of his, and now it's just like. But then what also sucks is there were people, like, he put out a video himself on Twitter after, like, his lawyer put something out, like, admitting to, like, an affair that his wife knew, all these things. And instantly the comments are, look at you being the bigger person, and, like, oh, see, he's sorry. It's okay. Yeah, I never doubted you. It's like, it seems so much easier to forgive the person in the wrong than to acknowledge the victim's suffering.
Right. No, you're right about that. It's very sad. It really is. Do you have anything to add about the Riddle thing?
I mean, that seems very. I mean, that's just outright violence.
Yeah.
You know, and of course, rape in itself is a violent act. But I mean, just the threatening to, come on, this stuff turns my stomach.
Yeah.
You know, and. I've been a very rough person my entire life, and I'm sure I've said some things that have been offensive and crude.
Right.
But I mean, but I mean, seriously, I mean, that's just there's no gray area whatsoever in that. That's just horrible.
Right.
You know, that's you go to jail for things like that. You
Right.
should go to jail for things like that.
Absolutely. And like you said too, when you told about what the speaking out movement was about, you were right though. It covers everything. I mean, because we had talked off air real quick about that guy. I'll just bring him up now, Darby Allin, who's on AEW. He was accused of manipulation and abuse in past relationships. The victim obviously wants to stay anonymous, you know. But like you said, it covers it all: manipulation, sexual, bullying. It's just so much that this covers. The next person I wanted to bring up. This was very strange because I never heard anything of this until this date that it came out. Jim Cornette, allegedly with his wife Stacy, they groomed young OVW talent and inducted them into a strange cult of sexual service.
Oh.
Cornette's best friend, Kenny Bolin, can attest to practically all of them, he said. During his podcast, The Bowling Alley, Kenny and his son Chris discussed Cornette's situation for well over an hour. Bolin also claimed Jim's wife had already been with the Big Show.
Oh.
Stacy allegedly offered to perform oral on Kevin Nash. No word on if Kevin took her up on it.
Okay. Now,
But-
I mean, Jim Cornette and Stacy are people that I'm not going to say I know them, but I've met in the past.
Right.
You know, I know Jim Cornette very passingly. I know when these kind of allegations first came out, it was with one person. It was a male student, and the allegation was that she had basically the scenario that plays out. You know, Stacy wanted to play, and Jim supposedly made pushes or working there, or contingent upon that. So then they did a timeline, I remember, of when this guy had actually wrestled for OVW and when Jim Cornette was actually in charge there.
Right.
And it didn't line up. All right. Okay. So that didn't sound, so it sounded like that was not true, but then you start getting into more and more reports of it. It almost feels like this guy knew what was going on, and he decided to grab some attention for himself, which is, by the way, if you co-opt any movement, any real movement like this, you're doing nothing just for some like personal
vendetta,
or just to get your name in the news.
Right.
I mean, there's no better way to take an actual movement off the rails and do that thing. So that's hard, but it sounds almost like he took things that he'd heard about that were going on down there and kind of applied it to him.
Right.
And unfortunately, what he did was he probably obscured the problem at first, and now you hear of more cases of it, and they've I don't want to disparage anybody who said who operates in an open relationship, but they have for several years. I mean, that's been going on for years. They've never made any secret of that.
Okay.
Now that it ranges into you do this for my wife, or you're not on
Right.
WTV for a month, or I mean, that's the manipulation end of things.
Right.
That really is, and even that ranges into a form of rape, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
It is, and the thing is, you start hearing these things, and you start realizing, what? It's the women who got the really crap into the sick, but it's not only the women,
Right.
because you hear reports, you start hearing reports of promoters that were, they were who were. I don't like to call them gay, because I don't know if this is necessarily gay.
Right.
That even if you're a gay man and you're just using your power,
Right.
whatever power that is, to try and convince people to hop in a sack with you, or whatever, and using your power to achieve that. It's
Right.
just But as far as Stacey and Jim Cornette, I mean, I don't know how they're going to weather this. I mean, this guy has obviously been involved in a lot of controversial stuff.
Lots.
For me, it kind of hurts, because about 70 to 80% of what he says, as far as his theories on wrestling, I believe.
Me too.
I do.
I'm a huge Cornette fan.
Yeah,
so it
I
hurts
do.
to have to say his name about this. To me, it does.
It does, but
Right.
but this is. You said earlier about what was the wrestler? You kind of you couldn't kind of believe it came out about somebody. That's the thing with this.
Right.
It's like it crosses. It seems across all
Yeah.
all your social beliefs.
Right.
And it's just
Right.
it really is. It's
What was
Yeah.
it? Keith Lee came out and added to it that he himself was a
Yes.
victim. He was at a bar. A woman was trying to make advances on him. He's like, "No, thank you, but I'll still talk to you." And he bought her a drink, or wanted to buy her a drink. He was like, "I'll do karaoke with you. Like, I'll be like, we can talk, but I'm sorry, I'm not interested." And she ended up. He's like, "I don't remember much after that, because I came back to a drink she bought me, and I woke up naked in a hotel room that I don't know where I was." So this can happen. And he's a big guy.
300 something pounds, 6'2" monster. I mean, he's huge. If he's not taller than 6'2", you're right.
Right.
It could
strong as
happen
it
to anyone.
strong
Right,
as it
and
gets.
any drugs are drugs.
Right.
The rape drug is a rape drug. Doesn't matter who you are. It can happen to anybody.
Right. Exactly.
Some people don't take no.
Yeah. And how you were just saying how it crosses everything. I just want to bring up someone, for instance, okay, that Congo Kong. He was named in a thing, and I'm sorry about the churning these pages. I have so many pages. I wrote so much stuff down. Congo Kong was outed for harassing wrestlers and stealing their money.
Oh,
Kyle Boone, a wrestler, alleged that when he was 19, Congo Kong took advantage of his inexperience in pro wrestling. This happened at his very fifth show that he was ever on. He missed a small spot in the match with Congo, and upon entering the locker room from Kong, started to scold him. After going out at intermission and selling his first shirt, he was very excited about, he returned to the locker room. Kong was still yelling at him for not selling his finishing move during the match by going back out there to sell his stuff. He demanded he give him all the money he made. The kid explained, "It's the very first shirt I ever sold." And Kong responded with, "Either show me your private or give me the money you made off your merch." So Boone exposed himself to Kong. Kong claimed he didn't see it, so he took the money too. And Congo Kong has not responded. And again,
what?
it goes everywhere. Oh, this speaking out covers it all.
That's
Covers it all. It's
crazy.
horrible.
Yeah, it is.
Let's just jump into the next one, because
There's not much you can say about that. That's just no.
the next name I'm gonna bring up. You brought him up a couple minutes ago, and I'm a big fan of him too. Velveteen Dream Patrick Rock.
This one hurts.
And when you said that though, I saw his first match back, and I'm not saying this just because we're sitting here now. I looked at him differently. For some reason, when I looked at him, I was just like, he wasn't the same guy I loved 3 months ago. I don't know how I feel about him anymore, But he's accused of being a child predator. As more victims emerged, he's allegedly sent nude photos to young boys. As young as 14, 16, 15.
So, and he's still working for NXT.
Yes.
Is one
Yeah,
of the main
and
roles.
he was just in a title
He
match.
was just in a, yeah.
Didn't James Ellsworth do that a few years
Yes,
ago?
it
Like,
was.
but it was to a
James
young girl,
Ellsworth.
but still an
I was-
underage.
Still, right.
Was
underage.
going to bring that up. The problem you get into here is that, unfortunately, there is a long history of this happening in that one particular spot. I mean, now it happens probably just as frequently as any place else.
Right.
But that's the national company of, that's until about a year ago, that was the only national company of record.
Right.
Really was.
Yeah.
So you would think they would be extra sensitive
Yeah.
to this, and especially considering that over the last 10 years, they've done so much more with a women's division.
Right.
And it just falls on deaf ears, it seems,
Yep.
It's like they make some minor moves, and then it goes away for a while because nobody talks about it, and it comes back. And,
Yep.
now it's back again.
I mean, we heard years ago that was the ring boy scandals and stuff like that. You
Yep.
heard a lot, that there's a lot of gay people in wrestling. There's a lot of gay people in life.
Yeah,
Right.
really.
And it's totally fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like these things that are going on with the children.
Like, children is a line. There's a line here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's driving me crazy because, like I said, my youngest is 18. She's an adult now, but I'm still looking at her as my baby. I don't
Right.
look at my Sarah as 18, even though she is. I still think of her as my little girl, And I couldn't imagine some of the things that have happened to these, victims by these guys. It's just horrible. There's another guy who's signed by the WWE, who's actually on Raw. They haven't put him on TV in a while. Austin Theory. He's been accused of inappropriate behavior with a 13-year-old girl. I don't know, man.
I'm not going to ask you to define inappropriate behavior with a 13-year-old girl.
Right.
'Cause
There's lots of things that
Anything.
there's no-
Even talking to them a certain way is
Yes.
a crime.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I know we're gonna get to later, who was local, even without naming names. Like, just talking a certain way is a crime. It can be held against you.
and pointing out that you're uncomfortable about it.
Right.
That's what, to me, like I told you guys off here, that was the creepiest part of it to me, honestly, that you knew what you were doing. You were making her feel uncomfortable, but yet you wanted to point that out to her.
Right.
That's
As if that's gonna make it better.
right, exactly. Which, all right. Mike Quackenbush. We'll just touch this real quick because he's really not that local, but this is one not only accused as Quack, but also his school and a trainer that has worked for Chikara a long time. So let's see some of the things that he was accused of. Harboring racist, homophobic, and abusive cultures in Chikara wrestling. And also Icarus was a part of that group. But he was also accused of showing off pictures of underage girls, bragging that she liked it
my
rough because she had a bruise on her arm. And as he told the people, he's like, she likes it rough.
That is still.
Bragging about an underage girl, I just don't understand. I don't.
You're also unwillingly exposing someone to child pornography.
Yep.
Even if they consented to sending you those pictures,
Right.
that's still a crime.
Yeah, because that would totally.
Did you ever meet Quack?
Yes.
I was going to say, were you there the day that they gave Jeff the award?
No, I was not.
I was
for
there.
that.
It was awesome. Jeff could be a shutout from the ring. I was like, "What's up, Jeff?"
No, I was not there for that. But I don't know. I met Mike a few times. He seemed like a decent guy. But
Yeah.
again,
That caught me by surprise. Even though I guess it shouldn't, because you never know anybody. Charlie Pride said it best, and I used to say this to my friends all the time. You never know what goes on behind closed doors.
Right.
yeah, but you know what though? Some of this apparently didn't go on behind a very well closed door.
No.
Very
You know, it's like that's part of it. I mean, there with that school, you have something that went on that almost seems systemic. And that's a lot of guys have done horrible things all on their own volition.
Right.
And then, but when it seems like accepted within a certain group to do it that way, oof, that's real bad. Because who do you turn to? Who do you turn to? Do you turn to Do you turn to the guy, throwing racial epithets around, or do you turn to the guy showing you pictures of a 15-year-old girl with a bruise on her arm that she likes to rub? No.
Especially if it's the people in charge who, like, what are you going to do unless you,
Yes.
like, organize a mutiny. But even then, sometimes we're like, well, I'll just let all of you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just to know that it was in a whole, you know what I mean? The whole company ended up coming down because it was more than just the owner and a few people. There's another guy, Rick Cataldo. Do you guys know Rick Cataldo at all? He's the
not.
boy diva. Okay. I know actually,
Wait, doesn't he run a Matter of Pride?
yes. He does.
I know the
Is that what it
name.
says?
Yeah, it's like a Matter of Pride, something very
Something like
similar to
but
that.
He has huge sexual misconduct allegation surfaces against LGBTQ indie promoter Ricky Cataldo. Two comedians, Matt Marin and Christopher Crespo, actually witnessed it of what he was doing. And they
That's worse.
described it as like a game of chicken.
Mark Maron, did he work somehow then with that Glow television show? Because Mark Maron was
No, Matt Marin.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right, Matt Marin. But yeah, so I guess he was rubbing the inside of his leg. He was touching his arms first, and the kid obviously is slapping him away, and then he's moving down. He's trying to rub the inside of his legs, and so the comedians were like, it was like a game of chicken. And then allegedly, Cataldo followed him out of the room where they all were, and kept trying to and explained to him how he performs oral on men. You know what I mean? All the while putting his tongue in the kid's face, like he's up close to him. And I'm sorry, but Ricky's kind of gross anyways, first off. I'm sorry, but he is. I actually did a show. I catered a show, and he was there. And I swear to God, he came by me, and I never smelled anyone stink as bad as he did that day. It was like, I almost, just like you did. I literally had to like walk away.
General hygiene should not be difficult.
But, so this kid, a place of power too. You know what I mean? He runs a company. He can book who he wants, and obviously he books people that he thinks he can get on.
Yeah.
Whether it's their preference or not.
Right. Exactly.
He's a predator.
Yes.
And
100% predator.
That's not right, because that gives other people who are trying to make a positive move in wrestling, like LGBTQ is still not really that accepted in a lot of places. Or people will say to your face that they accept you, and then the second you turn your back, they'll say something about them. But now that makes people who are genuine and just want to be accepted in something they love look like everyone is bad.
Yeah. And why would they even want to work there now? Too?
Right.
After hearing things like this,
Do they still run?
I'm not.
I mean, granted, there's a pandemic, but
yeah, but I think they were obviously. But I don't know if they're ever going to run again.
right.
That's for sure. Marty Skrull.
Yes.
Skrull.
I used to say it differently, but he, I guess, claims of sexual misconduct with a 16-year-old girl. Even though the consent in England is 16,
Yes.
she's still 16 years
Yeah.
old, and he admitted to it. So I'm not that he's any better than anybody on this list, but I will say it. To at least admit it. Maybe by admitting it, you might be able to help yourself and change. You might.
He did also ask people not to harass her or say anything. He admitted, he's like, like you said, he was like, yes. And he said, he goes, look, I might have made a mistake, something I believed was consensual. It turns out she doesn't believe that, and I'm sorry for that. And he's not saying that he didn't do it, but he's like, you people should not be harassing her for this. She deserves to have her voice heard.
That was great that he did that. Seriously, because not enough guys will do that.
Yeah, he still did something wrong, but at least he's somewhere higher on the poll of looks like he can be saved.
Yes.
Possibly.
Yes, I think by doing that, there is a good chance that he might never do that again. Might, I'm not saying he's never going to do that.
Ring of Honor said nothing. They still have not said anything about him, and he's one of the top guys there.
Yeah, he was the booker. I know that. I think they took the book off him. I do. So I think he's still working there, but they probably
that's a fair thing to do.
I heard they took the book off him. The next one's really crazy. The Knight family in England, which is Paige's family. Now, they're saying that there was, if you sent an email to them to get booked, whoever you were corresponding with, if you had sex with that person, you'd get booked. So if you were a girl,
right,
you'd be talking to one of the boys, the father or the two sons. They're saying that, and this was no problem. They didn't hide it at all. And if it was a guy, the mother wanted to have sex with him.
Didn't Paige try to hide it at first and say,
Yes.
no, this never happened?
Yes. And the sad thing is, because of that, you've seen things that, Paige has done. You know, I mean,
I forgot that happened.
What I mean? Like, so
Like all the clips and pictures that were released.
So, it kind of opens your eyes to say, wow, this is something that she might have been seeing her whole life anyways. Before, she did anything like that.
Well,
For a whole place to run like that.
And they ran a school. They had a school. They had a company.
and I'm trying to avoid making jokes, but I guess I'm going to make a bit of a comparison here that may seem like a joke. Sometimes you think, you go across the seas and, the ideals and the education level are going to be a little higher than in West Arkansas. And then sometimes you can go right across the ocean and you're still dealing with dueling banjos. It really is. And, and that's, I know that's probably a horrible way to state it, but I mean, but again, we were talking about how it doesn't seem to fit any social belief type of frame, or it doesn't seem to fit. It happens everywhere.
Yes.
Everywhere.
Yes. And you were saying, like, make light of things, and I wish we could, like, make light of a lot of this stuff, One thing I've always said, and this is the truth, I'm 55 years old. I've always liked older women. So, like, my joke on that is I hope it stops soon. You know what I mean? Like, but again, poor place to try to tell that joke right now. But I know what you're saying, though. You wish that it wasn't so heavy. You know what I mean? But like we all said in the group text with each other, this had to be spoken about.
And going back to what Skrull did, probably by a matter of degrees, it doesn't seem as bad as what some people did.
Right.
And it's good that he seemed to actually have some type of genuine remorse for it and realize he was wrong. But at the same time, there were states in America where you could get married at 14, or earlier even, and
could marry a cousin.
It was legal, sure. It wasn't right.
Right.
Not that it makes a difference, but how old was he?
That's a good question.
Because I'm not saying it makes it better.
Right.
But if he was only, say, 20 years old, that's a 4-year difference. Yes, it's still illegal. But I think sometimes people hear these things and they assume it's happening right now. Yeah. So he's 35, something he's mid-30s, and then it's like mid-30s, 16-year-old. Horrible. 20, 16-year-old, still horrible,
but not as bad. I know what you're saying,
Yeah, like I'm not giving him anything, but it's just like, how old was he when he made this mistake?
That's a good question. I really don't know that answer. We got about less than 30 minutes. I would like to go talk about some local things that happened, and then we can always go back to this stuff. There was a guy that, with in a bit of power in New England. And he, was hitting on a girl, And like I said earlier, he was making her feel, he knew she was uncomfortable with the way he was coming on to her and touching her. And, I mean, he even asked her, when is he going to let her jump her bones or something like that? And then for him to turn around and say, oh, look how uncomfortable you are, and you're overreacting, and this and that. Being in a place of power, and being able to help them get on shows, that's as far as I'll go with that part. You know what I mean? Training people, helping put on shows, and you're going to treat people like that? And I'm not going to lie, I've heard other stories about this said person, not about these things, but some really bad things that have been done to independent wrestlers, like a kid by the name of Avery Forrester. And Avery's been trained all over the place, so... You know what I mean?
I know Avery.
But I had heard that he stomped on his back and telling him that he's never going to be a good wrestler or something to that effect.
So here's where this one gets kind of personal for me. I know the girl that I know the young woman actually at this point. When I knew her, she was a girl. I in fact helped train her years ago when I had a gym in Nashua. and she asked me not to mention her name.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, even just bringing it up, it's not that hard to look up.
Right.
And I think actually she initially had some training with Steve Bradley.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then that went belly up, and then she came to where I was training, and she was young, and so I insisted that her mother be present at the training. Right, which just because and not just for me, but because there were going to be other guys there,
right.
and it's just that unfortunately is part of the cop out of all this, because unfortunately things can be misunderstood sometimes,
right.
and but that's not what this is about.
But that was smart on your part, though, anyways, to know that she's underage. She should have her mother here,
Well,
Seriously.
You tried to do something
Yeah.
to like.
Well, yeah, other than just here, parents sign this waiver,
Right.
and
Right.
then you're not gonna be present to see what's going on here, And I'm sure I said horrific things, because I do. I say
Right.
horrific things sometimes, but I didn't want her to ever feel that it was going to be okay for anybody to encroach on her, I guess,
Yeah.
is maybe the best way to put it. I mean, I knew the guys. I didn't think anything too serious would happen,
Right.
but you can't be too careful in those situations. And so then she went on to the school in question,
Yeah.
and and it was on our night out, our way out, her way out of town, basically, that
Right.
happened to her, and it was extremely, extremely.
Yeah.
It obviously affected her quite deeply, and so that one is a sensitive subject to me, because I think I also mentioned when we first came in here in the studio that my daughter wanted to get in professional wrestling at one point, and I didn't say no outright, but I also knew Dad wasn't going to be there to protect her all the time, and,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I know, I've seen it. If I'm guilty of anything, it's not opening my mouth enough when on the occasion that I did see these things.
When this all came out, I remember telling my girlfriend that I really believe it's time that a female opened up a wrestling school to train the females. Don't get me wrong. I mean, then you can cross train at other places. But I think for the basics of getting into the business, I think it would help. What do you guys think about that, honestly?
Well, I think it's time for there's been enough time and experience where there should be a woman willing to open a wrestling school,
Yeah.
whether it's, and I don't think just for the women.
Right.
I really don't think so.
Okay.
See, to me, I think completely different about that, Leo. I think it should be combined.
Okay.
And I know we're not supposed to swear on this, but if the effing guys can't learn, there are lines you cannot cross.
Right.
Through physical touch, through
Yeah.
physical intimidation, through mental intimidation. That's not, because it can even happen between wrestling students. It really can.
Yeah.
Right.
Because even now the women are outnumbered by the guys, and the guys talk, and the women want to be included in the network of people thereof, and
So, like to say, if you were to open up another wrestling school, you would definitely, right up the bat, you'd be thinking about hiring a woman to help train.
yeah.
That's the minute I read that about the subject person we were just talking about earlier, I said that to my girlfriend, and I was just like, I think it just would be good to have, more female trainers in general.
It just depends
And
how
black.
serious they'd be taken.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, from someone who is like, one of the other things I saw on Twitter was people saying, why are there no female promoters? And as a female promoter, it's
Right.
like, I can tell you exactly why. Because maybe it's not everybody, but the male counterparts I had in the past, they did that. I would never see them scream or chest up to another guy. They would talk tough or talk like a jerk, but they would scream in my face. They had no problem trying to belittle me. They would do it in front of everybody. The only time they would apologize would be if it was an audience. And it's like, some people take it seriously and they get confused. I'll come up and be like, hi, I'm Delilah. I'm running this. And they'll be like, what? You down there? It's like, yes, me down here, this little thing. And you
You shouldn't. But I mean, it went on for so long, and it still goes on. I mean,
It does.
You shouldn't have to, and this is nothing against them, but you shouldn't have to come across as a barroom brawler like
Right, especially if
Mae
you can't
Young.
back, especially if you can't.
I mean,
back.
good for her that she was that tough.
yeah,
I mean,
she was.
think of the crap she had to survive.
Right,
you know?
but look at what her best friend did. Her best friend was pimping out girls,
That was-
wrestlers, and
that
that's
was-
another situation
there
of
you
like
go.
it's
See?
not just like going back to the whole idea of it.
That was-
It's not just a men's
No,
thing.
that was-
It's a female thing too. Like
and-
going, hey,
That was I mean,
was
she
hard.
trained all women. That was very unique, where she
Yeah.
had them encamped for a lot of the time, and
Right.
was
Yeah, because what did she make like one of her bonds or something into like bunkhouse type thing, so the girls would sleep in.
yes, and
train.
yeah.
And she had a lot of girls at like one time that, I mean, because it was really the only place for females to train at the time, right?
Yeah.
It was a different time where you used booking agencies for certain things, Moolah for the girls,
Right. Kind of like they would use Vince McMahon for Andre the Giant.
Billy Watson. It was Whipper Watson's son
Okay.
that was in charge of booking a lot of the LPs.
Right.
So yeah, and I even said that.
Yeah, it's-
I even used the correct term for that.
Right. So, like we were talking about, I have a hard time with someone being in a place of power and to treat, you know what I mean? Just because you can do this and do that, and then to me it makes more of a creep by just being like that.
Mhm.
And like I said, to point out that the girl was uncomfortable all the time, that to me, the character of that person that's saying that is really bad, man. I'm sorry, but like everything that he did in the situation was bad. But to me, that was one of the worst, because that's like he knew what he was doing was wrong.
Right.
He knew it was making her uncomfortable, and he did it anyways.
Yeah,
which makes it worse.
Yeah.
you're making her squirm,
Yep.
and then you keep going to make her squirm, and that's the portion that I don't believe is sexual. I think
Right.
That's manipulation.
That's
That's
exactly.
emotional abuse.
Yeah, and there's something very wrong with that, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there anything you guys want to bring up, talk about?
I mean, kind of going off what we're saying,
Yep.
one of the biggest things I feel like coming into this that like some people are going to tune in and expect to hear us drag people through the dirt. And it's not the point of this movement or this discussion, any discussion that's happened basically. We're not, yes, are we condemning these people a little bit? Absolutely. But I feel like the bigger signs are maybe know what to look for. Because this girl was clearly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Other people, I have another wrestling friend who was at the same show. He could tell physically something wasn't right. He didn't know till all these years later. And like sharing like a personal story of myself. Like when I was young and stupid, and I got engaged when I was like about to turn 19. I was with the guy for 7 years. Guy was a wrestler. Yeah, it was a mistake. Shouldn't have been 7 months.
I don't mean to butt in, but I think you just called my wife stupid.
No, I'm not.
We know that's
So-
not true.
As a perfect example of just putting like myself out there for people that I wish had seen. So being where I first started, like I was usually a chunk of the years I was there, I was the only girl in the locker room. Like girls didn't stay. There was a good reason for that because a lot of women were mistreated there. I think I just kind of like, you let it go and when you see the abuse happening all the time, you kind of just get groomed to accept that this is okay, and it's not. I hated being booked in matches against him or anything that involved him because he would use that as an excuse to be harder with me. Like I showed, in preparation for this, I showed my friend one of our matches from like 2012, and all he had to watch was 10 seconds of how hard my ex kicked me to go, that's not fake. That's domestic violence under the cover of a professional wrestling match. And that happens with a lot of people. They're like, well, I'm in the ring with you. I'm a wrestler, so I can take liberties.
Yeah.
And I wish like the people who were booking at the time could see that. Right. I know a bunch of people saw what was going on and just didn't say anything.
That's why, like, they do have locker room leaders and things like that. And those type of jobs, when a promoter puts someone in charge of that, they should be looking for things like this. Like you said, you know what I mean? And not sweeping them under the rug and just it's boys being boys over there. Even though they're saying these exact words because there's two girls over there in the corner getting dressed or whatever. And they want them to hear what they're saying. It just...
Yeah, like, there was a guy who, like, and it disgusts me kind of to this day because his, like, wife, we used to wrestle, and she was trying to say, like, I tried to deter girls away from it. It's like, your husband got kicked out 3 times in the course I was there because he was physically he'd break in the new guys. He'd back chop people as hard as he could for no reason. I was sitting on the stairs one time. He had a masked gimmick because we ran secondaries to try to help people to get more time. I'm just sitting down on the stairs. He comes by, takes a hockey stick and breaks it against my shins for no reason. I used to hide under the ring sometimes from this guy. And nobody, like, despite how many times he got kicked out, the powers that be, because they were his friends, they don't hold him accountable. Look how time's gone by. He's gotten better. It's okay. And they'd let him back in, and people didn't want to work with him. Because they were afraid that he would hurt you. And now he has a daughter. And that's like, don't you see what you did?
That's horrible. Wow. How just to hit you with a hockey stick in your shin.
I wasn't doing anything. I was sitting.
Place that, honestly, like, it hurts.
I
bang my shin very lightly, and I'm like dying over there.
I had no kick pads on. I was sitting reading a book on the stairs, and I don't know what prompted it. And I considered him a friend at one point. Like, sometimes we would hang out, so I'd kind of like, he's just being rough with me. It's okay, but like the people in charge just let it go, and no matter how many times he got kicked out, they'd let him back in. And to this day, it bugs me because we were going up the stairs. My sister wrestled very briefly. And what happened was a girl slapped her, and she missed completely, cupped her ear. My sister lost the hearing in that ear. 2 surgeries later, she can hear. But this guy, as we're going upstairs, by the way, I'm going to throw in a spine buster. I'm throwing in a German suplex. Things my sister had never taken, never practiced. Literally, as we're going up the stairs, and the booker at the time told us later on after he saw it and heard what happened, he was like, and suspended the guy for a few weeks, was like, why'd you guys come up the stairs? Just stay downstairs if you're that uncomfortable. And people like pressure people into doing things.
But there's only so much of that responsibility that can stick on you.
Right.
And especially when somebody, first of all, people that school the new guys by beating the hell out of them. I've never been all that impressed with. There is, and I don't want to get too far off a subject.
But
it's part of this.
There is some physical discipline that goes on in this, but it's not supposed to be beating the living hell out of somebody. Now you're going into he's beating up women because
he can.
Because he could.
In a position that he can.
Me and my wife stayed in a hotel the last night. And we left the lights on when we went to go to dinner. And we said because we can. Well, no, that's different. This doesn't hurt anybody. Besides,
except for the guy that's got the bill.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's all yours.
there is something. There is something misfiring in your head.
I'm not asking who it is, but tell me that guy's not in wrestling.
He never really actually had a career outside of the one place. A lot of my stories, unfortunately, come from one place, and that place is whatever now, but it doesn't change.
But a lot of you came out of it and went to seminars and worked for people and have actually, done something in wrestling. So just be proud of that. There's a lot of you that have done that.
And then unfortunately you saw it goes on everywhere else too.
So it's like, I guess when people were like, no, schools are scummy, you shouldn't go there. And I was like, and then I kind of like agreed with this. Well, apparently they weren't wrong. I'm not saying I agree with not like trying to learn anything, but
I could see how that might be part of the aversion.
Or just the nervousness of, I don't know, I don't want to get in with these people I don't know.
But before I met any of you guys from there, I thought nothing but negative about that, right? But then I got to meet you, and along with another 7, 8 people, you guys are all awesome. You're doing good things, you know what I mean, with wrestling, great things. And that place is still kind of be there running because it was like didn't someone said it on here? I don't know if it was you or one of the Steves.
Well, it's no longer up there.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah,
No,
it
like
moved.
after when I was here like a year ago, that's when it like just gotten all shut down. And that's like just another example of abuse of power and manipulation and believing that because you hold so many cards in your hand that it doesn't matter how you treat the people who are below you. And if you've got friends who will, like, I feel like one of the biggest things of all this, if you have a friend that you know is wrong, like if you could go back in time and go to that person who made that girl uncomfortable and go, hey, I know you're my friend and you're supposed to be like, hey, you're supposed to be my boy. No, like you're doing something wrong.
Right.
And it seems to happen especially in places we saw each other all the time. So it almost made it easier to swipe stuff under the rug. But a few of these people in particular were like, they were allowing their girlfriends to mistreat other girls on the roster. And I like stood up one time because there was a girl on the roster who was managing and she was getting mistreated by like the guy in charge at the time, his girlfriend, another guy on the roster's girlfriend, just because they didn't like her. Right. And I stood up, like I never break character during shows, and I stopped and confronted them right there. Nice. And all I knew was I came downstairs, all of a sudden all I heard banging down this stairs was, where the F is Delilah? And I'm like, oh boy, the anger that came towards me, and he was this close, and people like pulled him back, like doing, what are you doing?
Right.
And it was just, there was a long meeting after that discussing all of it. And the fact that the people in charge were just finding reasons to justify why it was okay to treat this girl this way. It was like 3-4 hours of just like, it's a perfect example of this. Like she tried to like speak up. She tried to get help, tried to get people to stop. But no, they just let it go. When she wasn't around, the people were making fun of it. And it was just like, and it just sucked. And it sucks because sometimes what happens is these people who get the power, maybe they were bullied when they were younger, because it seems to be a vicious cycle of these were people who were mistreated. And then all of a sudden time goes by and they become that. Because that girl showed up years later, started showing up in the crowd, and she started doing the same thing to guys on the roster she didn't like. And when she came to a meeting trying to be like, I want to come back, just cried crocodile tears and didn't acknowledge that she did anything wrong. And it's like, you have people defending you. Yeah. And you just did the same thing to them, and you're trying to brush it off like because you're a woman that it's okay to treat these guys like that.
Right.
And it's like, again, it covers, this is everybody. Yeah. And it's like, I didn't think about it till this movement happened. How much I witnessed the people in power. Still to this day, I guarantee when this premieres, there's stuff I'm talking about that's going to show up on this tiny little like page on Facebook that's run by the guy who is quote unquote his company still. And he's been using it to trash people who have been gone for like years. And it's like, don't say, oh, but we can have these conversations. Like, we're adults. We're clearly having a conversation, correct? You don't openly post, though, about because that's a form of manipulation. That's a form of abuse. Bullies never want to accept they're doing something wrong. Until, even when they got stuff taken away, it's still just like, nope, I'm going to not believe I'm in the wrong. Guys, am I in the wrong? No, I've got all my friends backing me who are not willing to hold me responsible for what I was doing, despite all the evidence and screen caps.
That's the other part of the problem, though.
Yeah.
Because you're not only telling the bully, the person pulling this crap, that they're wrong, you're telling the people who are in charge of this guy
right,
or this girl that they're wrong, too, that they were wrong. They were because they were complicit. They were wrong, and they're not supposed to be complicit in that regard.
Right. And I'm sure there's times I'm sure there's times I've been wrong. Right. I tried my best to fix it. But then there's times like where I wouldn't do anything, and this is also my fault, and people would even say to me, like, oh yeah, you're never going to hold them accountable. You're never going to do anything about it because they hold this amount of ability over everybody. And it's just like, I would try, and then it's like, you don't have the backing. And I do honestly feel, looking back at all, a lot of it is because I was a girl. And they didn't want to let it go. Granted, now don't get me wrong, a lot of stories happen in one place, but it's also one of the things of why initially I wouldn't talk about it. Like here, I'm comfortable talking about but why I didn't put some stories out there, because I know for a fact that I could name drop 4 people that I know do stuff other places, and it won't matter because those promoters will still use those people. It doesn't matter what I say. I'm down here, whether they've been there longer or nobody, they'll either not believe me, claim it's just trying to start drama, that it's not what it say it is. And I hate it because there are some promoters that are out there. They're like, oh, I want to change professional wrestling. I want to make this like a thing of change. But that same person is like, I wouldn't, no matter how much they claim to be open and trustworthy in conversation, there's still a level of, there isn't trust in wrestling anymore. Like, I can't go to this person and be like, hey, I know you use this guy, but this is what he would touch me when I wouldn't be okay with it, or I just like let it go because I'm the only girl there. And it's kind of like, oh, I'm one of the boys if I let this happen. And that's not fair.
No, it's not fair at all.
But I would.
No one should
they'd
be
still-
touching anyone inappropriate.
Right. And they'd still use, I guarantee, like, it would not change a thing. So
So you said there's no trust in it anymore. There hasn't been as long as I've been involved in it, to be very
and
frank
that's
with
sad.
you.
Because it
Again,
shouldn't
we're
be.
trying not to mention names here. I am going to try and be as vague as possible here. But most everybody watching this who has ever been involved in wrestling in this area will know who I'm talking about. There was a guy, he was not very good, that used to pay promoters to get on shows and would actually a lot of times pay his opponent.
Right.
This guy would, if he felt like it, he would go down, he would touch your genitals during matches. And
And that's not.
And he would
and
ask
just-
to work with young boys.
Yes, he would. And it was,
The younger looking, the more he wanted to work with.
yes.
Oh.
And like I said, part of the problem was he paid the promoters
Right.
in some ways, and you turned your head, and they.
Yeah, because he's bringing in, a big star from television.
Well, they would use it for finance money and things
Right.
of that
Right,
nature.
but still, like,
Or just
money
put it in their pocket.
money doesn't mean that you can treat people however you want.
Exactly.
No.
But I'm glad you brought that up because we're getting down to like 6 minutes. I
Yeah.
wanted to bring up a few others local before everybody gets mad at us that we didn't talk local enough. There was a ref setting up cameras, kind of like a peeping Tom.
Yeah.
I've heard he's not going to be reffing too much anymore for the most part.
This one I don't know much about.
Yeah.
I just heard about it in passing because I
Yes.
was told like by someone else that I run shows with that like, hey, this happened. We can't use him anymore. It's like, oh, okay. Like I didn't, and it sucks because I had known him for 12 years at this point. One of my first
I always
friends
got
when
along with the dude.
exactly one of my first friends when I broke into this, and now it's like even if it turns out that it's for some reason not true. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it is. So if any of the victims are watching this, I am not saying that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is there are some people who decided to piggyback off this movement to try to turn something into it wasn't.
Right.
And I'm not saying he did that,
Yeah.
but it's just one of those things where it's like you said earlier with Velveteen Dream,
Yeah.
you look at that person different now.
I do.
Even
I can't
if
help it.
and even if
And
it
I
turns
like 'em.
and even if it turns out it was nothing, it doesn't matter. You're still like innocent or guilty people get off innocent.
Right. No, you're right. And I mean, I work at an elementary school. I love the kids at my school. You know what I mean? My girlfriend says it all the time. If anybody ever came into the school, I'd be the one that'd be gone because I'd give my life for these kids. You know what I mean? And to see people abusing kids, it just really, really bothers me. There's another guy, promoter in one of the 6 New England states. There's been rumors going around that he's a pedophile. There's a story that I'm pretty sure that he was talking about this particular person. A wrestler walked in on another wrestler, giving the promoter oral inside, not the locker room, but in the secluded area of the building.
But still,
There was also rumors of him setting up cameras and things like that.
What is
Yeah.
this with this peeping Tom?
I don't know.
because
understand.
apparently people don't want to just they know they won't get a yes if they ask.
This guy's been promoting for a while, and he promoted let's just say one night a week was a huge night for this company.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And
one night a week.
And like once a month was like a big Saturday show.
Yes, a very big Saturday
Like
show. You might have forgot about that.
I've worked for the weekly one once, but that's because the promoter in question isn't a fan of me personally. He's not a fan of, I believe, women in
Yeah,
general.
I was gonna say he's not.
He rarely has women on unless they're a already predisposed name. And even when he had women training with him, he never used them.
Right.
But his, I guess, co-owner, co-promoter, somebody like that, you know who I mean, liked me and Conway and was like, hey, will you come down this night? Because he's not here.
Right.
Did it. had fun. And I was like, if anything, in my mind, it's like, oh, I mean, I guess I marked that promotion off my bucket list. But I had never, even before hearing all these things, just something, I'm pretty good with intuition with people. I just something about him just never, I liked. I also saw him as someone like, and just hearing like one or two people, especially like Conway worked for them for a little bit. He only got to be on a show like twice, but it's like, he was someone who would, for being such a money mark, shall we say, like having no problem, like, blowing money on big things, if not potential return, wouldn't take care of the boys and would kind of seemingly, understand there's like dues to pay in wrestling, but if you've got someone driving multiple hours to be there from 10 in the morning till 4 a.m. the next morning doing airport runs for you, and you can't even give them $10 for gas. And this wasn't just Conway, because obviously of our situation, but like numerous people just like, oh, and it goes back to kind of what we were saying earlier, oh, if I kiss ass or if I do what the boss tells me to do, I'll get something. And that's not true. There are some promoters like Kim who will be like, nah, I'm gonna just keep milking it. I'll milk this cow for all it's worth.
They start to elevate somebody too much, and they can't get them to do those favors, and they have to go find somebody.
Right, it's like, oh, now I get, he's asking for gas money. He's not even asking to be on the show. He wants gas money. Nah, I'm gonna do this.
But you're right though. Why doesn't he take care of the boys like locally, even a few bucks?
Yeah,
but they do run. You're right about the Saturday. I forgot about the Saturday show.
Because they didn't happen. They maybe they started being less than once a month, but But I remember seeing one. It was loaded. It was loaded with every top indie star up and down the East Coast. I can't imagine what that cost. But exactly. I mean, I guess if you see a return, you see a return. He has his own place. So
we got 1 minute left. There's another story, and I'm just gonna bring it up, and that we'll drop it. We'll end the show. But a guy that was married and inviting women into his bed, asking other wrestlers. But then afterwards, it came out that allegedly they asked a 13 or 14-year-old girl. I really don't know if that's true. Like I said, allegedly, that's what I had heard. But guys, we could do this again.
I feel like we could go on this for hours. There's so much.
You guys like to do this again?
Sure.
Sure.
All right, great. I really appreciate you coming on. And this will give us more time to think, and we'll be able to, in our little group talk, figure out what we really want to talk about. Because there's a bunch of stuff, I guarantee you, when we watch this back, we're going to be like, we didn't even say this. Because, you only got an hour.
It's a scattershot of disgust.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we needed to come up with a plan for the future.
Absolutely, Delilah. Thank you very much for coming back on.
Thank you.
Mav, as usual, thank you. Guys, we're out. Peace.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.